Progress bar. Okay, you guys are live. Take it away.
Miyuyam, Netwanyane L Frank, None Tongvet Kukavet, Koi Rarámuri, Ajachmem. And I'm sitting in our canoe yard in Santa Rosa, California.
Te Wabausa, Kumbak Iha Sipu or river, Kakia Hasine Ku Inkanishi Ku Hapanaku. My name is River or Sipu in Lenape, which is one of the nations that I belong to, as well as so the Delaware Nation of Oklahoma, as well as Caddo Nation of Oklahoma. And I am here in Tewa territory in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And yeah, I'm a Two-Spirit artist and youth mentor, and I like to help Elle when I can.
Right on. And I guess not everybody or anybody might know where Tongva-Ajachmem and Rarámuri are from. Thanks. The Los Angeles Basin, Island of the Blue Dolphins, San Juan Capistrano, and Rarámuri lands are in the Sierra Madres of Mexico, up in the Chihuahua Mountains. We're out here in the canoe yard because we have a few minutes to talk about art. And a piece of art that Sipu and I do together is this canoe. Sipu has been land crew, which is a critical part of having a canoe and taking it on journeys. So I'm going to stand in a moment and I'll show you this canoe. But first I'll tell you that it was made by artists, not by canoe makers. One of the artists was experienced with wood. He was a Caneste or Wailaki native, and he made cabinets. So he figured he could do this. So we said, right on. So this canoe is the second one made in about 200 and something 50 years by natives in the Los Angeles Basin, the Tongva people. We used this canoe to get out to Island of the Blue Dolphins, which is called Minar, out to Pimu, which is Catalina, and I always forget the name of the other island. But we used it for island hopping and fishing and trade. So I'm going to stand up and I'm going to swing the camera a little and show you this canoe. And you'll hear me, but you're going to see, hopefully, the canoe. She's kind of pretty. She's made of sewn together planks. So we had to steam these planks. We had to bore holes. It has about 400 holes in her. There's no metal. That little wing there, I call it her lungs, not sure what it is called, but it is this piece right here. Can you see where yeah, there's a little wing here on the side. And that is used to go up and through a wave. Get the canoe. That is to go up and through a wave as to not break the momentum, this little wing right here. And we didn't know about this, or at least I didn't, until the Maori canoe builders were watching us build, and they said, of course we need this. And they explained why. But like I say, it's just redwood, and it's the planks in old time wouldn't have been as long as these. These are full on 20 something feet, about 23 feet long planks. And we had to steam them in a steam box, which we had to figure out how to make. Thank goodness the Chumash helped us. They've made about 6 of these canoes, something like that. So they gave us advice every step of the way. So Sipu and I have been on a canoe journey. It's a very difficult but incredibly wonderful native experience. Tribal canoe journey, it happens up in Washington State and up in Canada. And I asked Sipu to come along and to be on this because it's always good to have somebody younger. Because as I find as I get older, you know, I'm more get off your lawn, even about art. So it's always good to have somebody coming in with fresh ideas and enthusiasm. And Sipu has been on journey with us. Say anything about journey?
Yeah, I think that for me, especially being part of our specific canoe family, has been really, really impactful because of the similarities and where in both of our communities, you know, whether it was missionization for y'all, or you know, being in the Bible Belt for us and being so far away from our homelands. Our canoe cultures for Lenape and Caddo people are not practiced currently, but they were for thousands of years, and that's, you know, that's similar for you. And so our little like motley crew that we have of people from all over, you know, we have natives from all over, we have non-natives, we have people who are, you know, like relating to their indigeneity through the process of what we're working on, and people who are kind of becoming awake to a lot of things through the process of being in the family. And I think it's really cool in terms of like thinking about ingenuity, you know, like ingenuity, and how, you know, sometimes you might not necessarily have the numbers, you might not necessarily have, you know, the community that we would have had 500, 600 years ago to do all the things we need to do. But something that I learn from you every time I'm around you, you know, is you just kind of do it. And I think that our canoe family is a good representation of that. It's a good example of that. You know, you just, when something's resting and it's not supposed to be resting, you know, like a canoe living in the body of the people, like you just do whatever you can to wake it back up and take care of it. And I think that that canoe right there is like living proof that sometimes you have to do that. Yeah, so it gives me a lot of faith, you know. There's and it connects back in circles, you know. We were in, where were we? Where was landing 2 years ago?
Oh, I never know.
Yeah.
I'm just
We were
always
in
worried.
we were in Washington. We were in Puyallup, I think. Yeah, and I thought I was the only, you know, Caddo in Delaware. Maybe on journey, you know, we're so far away. We're not Pacific Northwest tribes. We're from, for people who don't know, we're from Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas area for Caddos, and New York City State, New Jersey, Pennsylvania for Lenape, Delaware people. And so, yeah, I'm just hanging out, and some guy with the last name, some guy starts talking to me. He's like, oh yeah, I'm here to see L Frank. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's my auntie. He's like, oh, all right, cool. Well, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm Caddo. And he's like, oh, me too. He's like, yeah, I'm also Caddo. Where's your family from? You know, our family's from the same place. We're probably related. But you end up kind of seeing that even though sometimes things might feel broken in our communities, considering 500 plus years of colonization, that those, when you just do it, those circles kind of line back up and come back together.
Exactly. And other cultures talk about their canoes. They talk about them holding the culture, and that's what this canoe does. And although it's from the LA area, it still holds the culture of, like you said, so many people. We have Cherokee crew, and he can't stop looking for a log. He's going to make his own Cherokee. It awakens something in us, another part that makes us whole. There are so many pieces that have been just smashed that we have to put back together, and the canoe is one of them that helps us with this puzzle in a huge way. It holds all of us together, even though we come from such different places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have there's a mentor that I have from the Bay Area.
1 second, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? No, you can't hear me. Can you
just
hear
have
me?
to
Yeah.
talk loud.
Okay, hold on. Now, how about now?
Okay.
I have a mentor in the Bay Area. Her name's Natani Nota. She's Dene. And she does a lot of artwork with pieces of cars that she finds on the side of the road. So little lights, you know, from tail lights or hubcaps and things that she finds from the side of the road. A lot of things that might have come from crashes. And she uses that, she beads them, and she uses that to talk about, you know, colonization as an impact, right? It's this time where everything kind of like comes together, it collides, and then it all disperses apart. And I think that's interesting to think about when, you know, we have this impact, this thing that brings everything like separate, and then literally the building of the canoe is you're taking all of these separate pieces and you're putting it into one thing that can, you know, hold the people.
Exactly. And it's not like this, this has been one year in Canada, the natives, they came back and they said the Indians in this canoe, and they said, oh, it was so spiritual. We were followed by orcas. It was so spiritual. And I said, those orcas are hungry and they look at you as food, you know? So we get a whole lot out of this. And we also get to relearn about nature, because many of us now have to be in cities. What do we know of the ocean and large sea mammals coming after us with teeth? But this canoe being made by artists, I'm really glad that it held together and didn't fall apart, because it's a piece of art where your life depends on you making the art perfectly. And we had the help of Alaskan natives, California natives, Dene, Filipinos. Oh, we could not have done this without the Filipinos helping us. And all of us, all of our brains together made this piece that I had only made one before in the 90s, and it was built entirely differently than we built this. So making this art together that carries everybody, to me, it's what artists are supposed to do. We're supposed to not only mirror the world around us and inform the world around us, but we also get to participate and be fed, and that's what this canoe has done.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she's
I
done.
was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it was like to, you know, when something hasn't been done for 200 years, the steps and you know, the protocol and the proper way of doing it, which is so important. My dad tells this story that he learned from his Nez Perce buddies. And I guess, you know, Lewis and Clark took shelter with the Nez Perce and the Plateau tribes for a winter. They were like dying. They were so desperate, they were like eating the bottom of their shoes for the leather on them. So, you know, the Nez Perce take care of them. They're trying to get out of there. And so they really hurriedly built a canoe. And, you know, they didn't take the time to properly learn the steps, right? And properly learn how to do it. The Nez Perce were like, it's not going to work. They're like, no, we got to get out of here, you know? And so they rush. They get out on the river and they sink like 20 feet out. So it is super important and technical, and also being part of, you know, communities that have been able to keep their traditions when it comes to these types of things. We also have a knowledge that in an ideal state, there is protocol to creation. And so I'm wondering what it was like for you when you didn't really have anyone, any other Tongva people to gift that down to you, you know, at least physically,
Sure.
maybe, you know, maybe spiritually.
Sure. Well,
So I was wondering, yeah, about that.
yeah, it's good you said physically, because I also made the first stone bowl cooking pot by someone in our tribe in about 200 years. And I had never, and I haven't since, I totally dreamt that bowl. I saw them making it, you know, and I saw it finished. And so Tongva did pass it down. As for the canoe, I did all that, you know, museum reading that I do. And the Chumash had built, I think, one or two by then. I didn't watch that. And then we built the one in the 90s. But for building this one, it was entirely different. This was a lot more dreaming, a lot more praying, a lot more relying on genetics to really communicate with me. You know, because we all of us who have had so much stuff, waking it back up is difficult, and you can only go with your best intentions. And you can, and you know, if your intentions weren't the best, then things will happen that will teach you to get better intentions. But really, it's a whole lot of prayer. And I think that our ancestors really, they're with us all the time. It's not just lip service. I live in quite a mixed community, so you could run out to that honking horn to buy some orange chips from the old man on the bicycle. Yeah, doing something that you're not sure of is really scary because you don't want to be offensive to ancestors or to future. You don't want to be offensive. You don't want to be, you know, I am a Hollywood Indian because that's my homeland, but you don't want to be a Hollywood Indian. It's got to be real. And that takes a great deal of listening, I think, in order to do something.
They're saying that the canoe is beautiful.
Pardon?
They're saying that the canoe is beautiful.
Oh, she is beautiful. And I fell in love with her. I've never fallen in love with a piece of art before, but when she had only 2 bottom planks on her, and we were just putting on the third, I felt this strange feeling. It wasn't strange because I knew the feeling. It was just strange that I had the feeling. And I realized the feeling was that I was in love with this. I mean, really, really in love with this. And out on the water, she became, she fell in love with our skipper, and then she bonded with the rest of us. But our skipper was named Lindsay, and she just knew how to talk to this canoe. And she even, what do you call it, parallel parked it twice, which is pretty difficult. But this canoe fell in love with us as much as we loved it. She is pretty. Yeah, culturally. Oh, you have another question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, culturally, it has been interesting. It's lessened a bit in the Pacific Northwest. This canoe is owned and made by a woman and a whole lot of other people. I mean, I stood around just giving orders basically. But when we go up north, the older men are not used to talking to the women about canoes or about, I don't know what the protocols are, but I'm not the person to be addressed, even though it's my canoe and I'm the only person standing there. So that's been rather interesting culturally. But yeah, they go around it by if a small 10-year-old boy even walks up, they'll ask him questions, and then I'll answer the boy, even though the boy's never said a word, so that we can then find out. But they love this canoe because they know she's made the old way. She's sewn together in glue.
They are asking if we could tell us what it means to be Two-Spirit.
Okay, I will briefly, and then you can give the thesis.
Okay.
Two-Spirit, right off, it's a term from, I think, the East. And what it means to natives is whatever it means individually to natives. It can be, for me, I use the word and I feel the word Two-Spirit as opposed to homosexual, or, you know, I don't find anything wrong with queer. I don't find anything wrong with lesbian. I don't find anything wrong with any of those terms. But Two-Spirit is about service, my service to community. To me, Two-Spirit speaks of service to community. As a Two-Spirit person, I'm, you know, maybe I don't have kids, but I can watch everyone's kids. You know, maybe there's no food, but maybe I can get everyone food. You know, it doesn't matter the role, the so-called roles. I can be what's needed.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I think that for kids who have grown up away from their homelands or away from their communities, it can sometimes be hard to establish what our gender or sexual identities mean to us in the Indigenous context, especially if our communities have also lost a lot of that prevalent information. So you've been super helpful in terms of me just feeling comfortable of it defining whatever I want it to be for myself. I know that for some specific communities, like I know my friend educated me recently that for Navajos, Two-Spirit means something very specific and ceremonial, and you wouldn't really just go around claiming to be that unless you had that position in the community. For my community, it's not that way. So it's different for each community, right? And there might even be like, hey, wait, what are you saying you are? Among Native people. And so I think that's important to acknowledge. But for my community, I'm even just recently coming out with some of this knowledge because of a lot of our elders are Christian. And, I think that whatever spiritual connection people have is good, but I think that it's hard sometimes when those certain religious practices cancel out, the lives of marginalized people, and cancel out old traditions that we had. But for us, Two-Spirit people would learn both ways. We would learn maybe a masculine and a feminine way to keep the ways intact too, so if the men forget a song, a Two-Spirit person can be the one to know that and share that, right? And Two-Spirit person can also be the one to know the dances and remember that. And that's not something that I have been able to culturally fulfill yet in my life. I would like to, but I'm not there. That would be like a goal, or a lifelong goal. But Two-Spirit people are also they are people who in Caddo, they are people who are like counselors, they understand both sides, as well as people with maybe certain, like what we would call now as like intellectual disabilities. They can see the world in a different light, and Two-Spirit people can see the world in a different light. And so that calls upon being a mediator, or someone who would settle an argument. So, it can be about queerness, and it can be about, who you want to date or whatever, but it can't be separated from the spiritual and communal aspects that I think we take upon ourselves. They're also asking, how do you respond to deal with the gender norms around the canoe today?
Respond to the gender norms?
Yeah. So I think that they're saying like with the, some people expecting to talk to a man.
Oh, well, personally, I popped out of the womb kind of androgynous. So I've always disappointed everyone. And I never really noticed. Yeah. So I just, it's not what me personally has been conscious of, which I think has allowed me a whole lot of freedoms. I never had to go through the angst of, oh, these people don't like me because I'm, Two-Spirit. I mean, I've been assaulted on the street by people who don't like Two-Spirit people. But what I'm saying is emotionally, I haven't been assaulted. For looking away, or it's just the funniest thing to me is when I show up and people think they're inviting L Frank a dude, and I show up, and it's like ta-da, and I find that amusing, So not to say I haven't suffered in my life. We could take another 48 hours. I'll tell you all my sufferings, but really spiritually, even before I was born, the ancestors were telling me, well, they were rather loud, I call it yelling, telling me what to do and who to be. And in the 60s, when I experimented with drugs, they came and said, what the hell are you doing? This is not what we told you, before you were. So along the way, that's what's been like the things that I bounce off of, not what I wear or what I'm called or who I, make Google eyes at, that. So I just don't really care, because I don't this dominating society is not real, nor is it lasting. But the mandates from my creative creation, those are what's real and lasting, to care for the planet.
I think things I know about you that I want other people to know.
Good thing I can't hear you.
Okay, so we have maybe just a few more minutes left for me, actually. I mean, if you want to stay on and keep telling them the things, then please do. But they said let's see, haku haku from
That's Chumash. Chumash or
yep,
yeah.
Chumash,
Chumash.
but Syuxtun Chumash territory, Syuxtun Chumash,
Okay.
Chumash
right.
territory. Being that we've lost a lot of our culture among our Chumash communities, along with our two-spirit practices, I would appreciate any thoughts either of you are having on wearing skirts in ceremony if we are a two-spirit woman. That's an interesting one.
Oh yeah. Well, let me say, and this isn't far off the mark, but last time my mother tried to put me in a dress, she managed to get me in the dress and I immediately threw up on it. So I don't know. Spirit would have to come, take me by the hand and force me into that skirt. I understand, you know, I'm sorry. I have to take that back. The Hawaiians in ceremony once, I had to sit with the women all demurely and tuck my legs just right and, you know, wear the lava just a certain way. But you know, that was Hawaii. So that there's some slight difference. I don't know what it is, but I think you can't be culturally rude. Like I threw a fit about wearing that skirt in Hawaii for months, and then I realized, shut up, you're being culturally rude. You know, so I put it on. So it depends on what the people around you will allow. If they will allow you to be yourself, if it's not about you and it's about prayer, then what does it matter what you wear as long as it's the prayer? Mm-hmm. You know, because naked prayer is still just as valuable. Mm-hmm. And it's your feet touching the ground, if possible. But it's other things. The skirt is just one other form of transmission of spirit. Mm-hmm. But that's just me, and that's me about skirts. I mean, I'm a center fielder. Come
on. Yeah, for me, it's complicated. You know, I try to be really respectful of my own community's ways and the assumptions that they're going to make about me and what I should be doing because I didn't grow up there. I'm not necessarily comfortable just going in to the space and saying, this is what I'm going to do, you know, when I, at the same time, I do want to make space for other queer Caddo and Lenape people. So how do I do that? I'm becoming a bit more confident in that area because I just found out that I had an uncle. He would have been a great uncle, but in our way, he would have been a grandpa. And he was open out in Oklahoma doing peyote way with his white boyfriend in the 70s.
Wow.
And the boyfriend was part of ceremony and everything. He has pictures of them both dressed up in peyote way regalia. So I feel, you know, when I know like that I have close comfort to ancestors like that, it makes me feel a bit more confident. And as I spend more time in my community and show that I have a commitment to being part of my community, I become more comfortable. So I usually wear women's regalia. I don't, for me, necessarily think that has to say something about my gender, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that I can be, I don't know, I think I can be a woman and a man and all of these other things all together all at once and none of them all at once. And so I don't think it necessarily has to say, oh, I'm this thing. I think I can say I'm who I am and I'm going to appear this way and abide by this protocol right now. there's also quite a few Caddo women who would wear ribbon shirts with skirts. That was like something very kind of normalized. And so that's something I would like to do, you know, mixing it maybe a little bit. And then additionally, yeah, I mean, the last dance that I went to, I actually didn't put on my regalia. I just put on jewelry and wore my mocks and some pants and a hoodie. It's also pretty informal. In my community, a lot of people are coming up in basketball shorts. So there's a little bit of room to, you know, kind of be what I want to be in either of those, in those spaces. But yeah, it's important for me to consider all of the angles that I'm at, right? The privileges that I have coming from outside the community, or not wanting to challenge, you know, an elder when that's not my place, and also wanting to make sure that the youth know it's okay to be queer. It's okay to be two spirits,
Yeah.
good and beautiful. So
Yeah. You know, when your community is so small or really, really teeny and you're far from it, that's just a whole lot of, like you say, it's a whole lot of effort to be respectful. And like, all right, I know and love a lot of Chumash people, and they're two-spirit people. They seem to be okay with themselves, and that's all that you can do. You know, when you're okay with yourself, and it doesn't matter who you are. It's, again, they're okay. By that I mean is that they are seen as responsible and seen as helpful and seen as, and that's all that's important. It's not, you know, the skirt is just my own whatever, but it's not what we wear. It's the spirit that resides within us.
Yeah, it's interesting trying to get, you know, maybe seek permission to do both or something like that from someone. We have different types of face paint based on gender and stuff, and sometimes I want to do both, but it feels like I need to get permission. But is there, you know, a queer inclusive person that could give me permission? You know, is there?
Well,
it's hard to find those places to seek that, but I think that they find you, you know.
Right. I was taking a Miwok family up at the Tuolumne Rancheria. They brought me into their family, and it was their queer white man who had been married into and lived with the family, and, you know, these baskets and all. And he told me I could wear whatever the hell I wanted as a two-spirit. And I thought he was being flippant at first, and then I gave it, you know, many years of thought, and I realized he's absolutely right. And you know, it's my regular American clothes. I am who I am. Why not? You know, I don't. Not that I have regalia, but I don't think what we wear is important unless it's an important piece to ceremony. That's it. Now, that being two-spirit is just A-okay. Always was. Chumash people can look at Deborah Miranda's writings, because she wrote about, I don't know what they were doing, some 40 or something, maybe I got the number wrong. Chumash people were having gay pride, and the Spaniards came along and messed up the party. But you can look at Deborah's writings.
Yeah, a lot of times, even in communities where they think that it's not, where maybe people aren't actively supported right now, if you do the research, a lot of times it was, you know, I just saw a post where, and we're on Pueblo territory here in Santa Fe, and I just saw a poster for the Acoma word for trans. And so, you know, finding things like that, finding your language, or finding, you know, even dreams, things like that, that kind of help affirm that your, you know, your existence is a blessing.
At a two-spirit gathering, at the 20th anniversary, with Richard LaFortune, it was in Minnesota, and there was a woman whose son was supposed to go. He's a two-spirit, but he didn't, so she went in his place. And she was petrified. Her husband wasn't sure about all the seedy looking characters. They were all gay men, so I doubt they were seedy. But the seedy looking characters, but she remained. And 15 minutes in, she's just laughing and saying, why the heck didn't you tell me about you people? You're so much fun. Why didn't I know about you people? Why didn't I know? You know, and she's full on member of her Native community. And she went back home and she caused havoc because she said, what is wrong with us? Mm-hmm. And really the biggest obstacle we have to anything two-spirit is Christianity. Yeah. And that's a hard thing for young two-spirit to deal with if they, you know, a lot of people seek a God of some form and a belief system. And what's available is Christianity. What is not available are our old religions. Pieces, elements, the sun, the stars, the moon all still exist. It all still exists. It's just not put together for us. And so they go to Christianity and they find solace in a God. And then the people tell them, well, you know, you gotta stop this and get rid of those people in your lives. I joined the military. They said I could talk to my gay brother, but no other, you know, queer person. And so all these messages are against, and it's all propped up by Christianity. And so it just makes it really, really hard for someone to step away because they feel like they're not only a disappointment to their family because they're two-spirit, but they're also stepping away from spirituality and place with them. So it's not an easy thing, even today, and it should be, but it's not. So if any of you are having trouble, just call us.
Yeah, for real. Talking to the youth about it, you know, I got a lesson yesterday. Who I am not necessarily always out to my kids because I don't want to upset their parents and then have them not, you know, let me mentor them. But it's a fine line between also, you know, making sure that they know that you exist personally so that they can be affirmed in their existence. So I had a kid yesterday who was like, yeah, I drew this picture and it has a pride flag behind it. You know what pride is? Pride month? And I was like, yeah, I do. She's like, or they're like, yeah, oh, well, you know what non-binary is? My auntie's non-binary. And I was like, cool. Well, me too. And they're like, oh, so you know what it is? And I was like, yeah, you know why? And they're like, why? And I was like, because that's me too. And they were like, what? That's me too. And so, you know, it's kind of really them being like, hey, this is me, their bravery, you know, and continuously, time and time again, I see the young people who are like, I'm queer, I don't care, like, you know, I'm out here. And it's always kind of puts me in my place a little bit. I'm like, wow, I'm afraid. And here's this, you know, 10-year-old who's like, I'm doing what I want. So, but, you know, also, you know, just being a person where they're comfortable to say that is important, I think.
Yeah, the first time I was taking a group of 6th grade girls camping, the mother comes out and says, my daughter is so in love with you. And I panicked. You know, I was 20, maybe one. And I said, is that all right? And she says, of course, it's perfectly natural. And they all shoved me out the door with their 6th grade girls. Because I used to worry about that. And I worried about it for a long time. But, you know, people see us for who we are if that's what we show them. And they trust it. That's something that I wish I'd have learned younger.
Yeah.
Be thought of as caring. You know, you have to be those things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how are we doing? Straight off canoe. This canoe, sometimes people think that they call it a two-spirit canoe. And it's not. You don't have to be two-spirit to be part of the canoe. But there are quite a few two-spirits and other letters of the alphabet. People this canoe.
Other letters of the alphabet.
There are so many now. And that's good.
There really are. It's funny, I think.
All right, no more questions, or how are we doing for time?
I think that's it. No more questions. And I'm late, but
Oh.
usually late. So
Oh, that's right.
yeah. You have anything else that you want to share?
Well, if you're anywhere nearby or if you're far away, um, and you're interested in this canoe and being a part of canoe family, there's a lot of responsibility and a whole lot of family. And just get a hold of us, and I'm sure you'll find a way. We're all over the place, but and you can be a part of this canoe. You can be a part of the family, and you don't have to think, oh, I'm not going to go out and brave the oceans. They put me in it for 5 minutes once to come into landing, and I had a total panic attack. But even though she's a really seaworthy craft, but land crew, there are people who can help the camp move along from one place to the next as the canoe travels around the shoreline. And that's a real important piece. And we need people who make song, and people who just want to be a part of something larger, something really real.
Mm-hmm.
So people are welcome. And if there are any true canoe builders out there, I'm hoping to make a second one. I have a bottom board, and I could use a little bit of help since my cabinet maker.
Yep. Yeah, I think just as, coming from a community where we did have these traditions and no one is making them now, being around you, being around the Pinkhams, their Nez Perce family, they made the first Nez Perce canoe to be on the water of the Wallowa Lake and the Wallowa Mountains in northeastern Oregon. Being around people like that is really helpful for just getting that inspiration and like starting to weave yourself a part of this project to bring these really old ways back. So if you're someone who's looking for those skills, and maybe you're the only one of your tribe, it's still really helpful to be part of this family and part of this community. Once I joined Canoe Journey, I found out my cousin had gone on Canoe Journey, and a year later she's like, I want to make a Caddo canoe, and I'm like, I want to make a Caddo canoe, and my dad's like, I want to make a Caddo canoe. So it's out there, the energy's out there, and just committing to and being a part of it really does help push things forward.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you're on your own doesn't mean you can't do spectacular things. You just have to create that community.
Yeah. This person says, what is the outside of the canoe made of?
The outside of the canoe?
Yep.
What is it made of?
Yep.
The same thing as the inside. These are redwood planks. They're about an inch wide, thick. They're about an inch thick, and they're redwood. I asked a friend of mine who lives in the forest if he had any old wood because I wanted to make a canoe. And he showed me a picture of a chopped down tree, and he said, how about this? And he milled the wood. Mark is his name. He milled the wood for us 2 size so we could go on the first tribal canoe journey with this. And so the whole thing is redwood, which is an excellent for water. It swells so that if there are any leaks, it kind of closes them up. The outside of the canoe, you see these stitches, these lines. That's where the planks, we had to make holes and run string through and glue the planks together. And we use tule pith for the in between the planks. Tule is a large reed. You can make houses and dresses and canoes out of tule. But the pith is it's a really nice material. So you take one plank you put on, old time would be asphaltum and pine pitch. Nowadays we use marine stuff. You lay down some of that marine stuff, you lay down some tule pith, you lay down some more marine stuff, you get your steamed piece of wood that's been in the oven for about 2 hours, and it's all wobbly and wiggly, and you bring it and you lay it on there, and the wood starts to harden in place, and you clamp it all in, and as it dries, you sew it together, and it's a very specific seam, a very specific knot. So it's just knot, string, and redwood. It's pretty basic.
how much did you read a lot in preparation of learning how to make it, or did you just get together with other people of other nations who knew how? Both?
Oh, well,
You
in
just
the,
figured it out?
yeah, the first time, oh, redwood splinters are not fun. The first canoe in the 90s, there was a man who he used to gather animals for marine world type stuff, and then he started working with Jacques Cousteau and started saving animals, and he was interested, so he built one for us. He had built one with the Chumash, I think. And so he built that one. Again, that one's built entirely differently, but I got the concept. And there's a book called The Tomol, and it has a lot of notes and rememberings of people. Like there's all these Chumash rememberings, and it says 15 Tomols went out, and they call it Tomol, we call it Tiat. 15 Tomols went out, one came back because the bottoms fell out of the others. So, which is why the bow and stern of ours is sewn entirely differently, because I told that to the young boys who were doing the sewing, and they panicked and they sewed it just like these stitches, which nobody's ever done, and nothing's going to fall off of this canoe, I'll tell you. But I knew how we had made ours, the angles, the degrees that we had made, and I knew that I wanted something similar, so I based it off that. And then the rest, we kind of just did as artists. We figured out ways. We saw how the Chumash had made these inside pieces to build around the side, just a piece of plywood. But we altered that with screws, so we could, when the canoe shifted ever so slightly, we could then turn screws and move things over and back. So we made these more like it was an installation than a canoe, but it's a seaworthy installation. So the research, there was as much research as could be, and then there was do. Sometimes you just do and hope the bottom doesn't fall out.
Will you tell them about a little bit about your the little houses you made in your backyard, the addition to your house? As I think a lot of people, especially a lot of young people as well, are thinking, you know, a lot of people are like, looking for tiny houses or with low, like, you know, like myself and my partner who don't have a lot of money, but we want to live on the land and we want to live somewhere, you know, sustainable and easy to set up. And so I think that like knowing that those things exist has been super helpful for us, and like, we could just do it.
Yeah, I can't turn the camera and show you any because there's a lot in the way, but we live on 4/10 of an acre, and I decided that we would just build straw bale homes. Well, it's morphed into cob and in this combination, you know, and my partner was a journeyman brick mason, so not that you need that kind of expertise, but it's nice to have another, you know, building knowledge input. But we built small legal little, say that for those listening, small legal little two of them are their rooms, but they're my art studios, and most of them are made from found and repurposed materials, like broken concrete for what are those called? Footings, even old wood, you know, we've taken nails out of, and windows. Thank you. Someone's doing this on the other side of the camera. Yeah, windows. Just everyone, you know, my family they love me so much they call me a trash picker. Yet my homes are really nice and they're really sweet because these repurposed objects aren't going into a landfill. So if you want to build something yourself and you have just a teeny spit of land and you have some dirt around, you can make yourself something really quite pleasant to live in and really inexpensively. And there's a lot of help around on how to do it. Housing for everybody is really, really tough. It's way too expensive no matter where you live, almost no matter who you are. So making small houses that consist of mud is incredibly smart. And again, you don't have to do a lot of heating or cooling. And you can make it any way that you see in your head. It's a perfect thing for artists. Again, Ethan and I, who helped make this canoe, we're just two artists, and I decided, let's make these buildings. So my partner would come home, there'd be a hole knocked in the house wall. So we're going to add on some mud room. But we're just artists, and we understand. Artists come at things, everything is a problem to be solved. So we spend our lives doing that. Oh, how does green become, oh, well, it's these two colors. So everything is a problem and a solution. So building your own house is just another art project. And there's a lot more information on building little rooms than there is building this canoe. So it is exceedingly easy and very rewarding. And what is it? An eighth of the world's population lives in mud houses. So
Yeah, I always think about that. Like, there's nothing wrong with, like, I feel like a lot of the pre-colonial conditions that we were living in would now be seen as poverty. You know, there's nothing wrong with not having any money. Or having things that are made from that didn't cost money. The only thing that's wrong is when those things, living in that way, makes the world around you, makes that unsafe.
Exactly. If I'm a trash picker, so be it. But I'm not. I'm trying to be less of a problem to the greater world and still live in beauty.
Yeah.
There's enough that exists. There's enough that exists for everything, be it food or be it supplies for building something, or be it the ability to take care of community. Everything exists. We just have to stop everybody. We just have to stop taking so much and realize what actually is here.
Yeah.
We just have to listen to two spirit people, because we could move the world beautifully. It'd be beautiful, it'd be artsy, there'd be dancing and music, and children would be fat and happy. Old people would be toothless, they'd be sharing teeth.
I always think about, building your own space, and I think I get really overwhelmed a lot of times with, like, the tiny pieces of colonization. The little, like, the fact that little steel nails are in every building around me, and there's little pieces of metal, and all that stuff is being mined from somewhere, and none of it was prayed over, and, like, all the paint is toxic, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And back in the day, it's just like everything we were in relation with, our houses and our clothing and our food and our art, was all so heavily prayed over, because we understand that we were building things to protect ourselves and look after ourselves with things we had relationships with. It wasn't just resources. A tree, we cut down a tree to use it. It's not a resource like, oh, we need to get as many. It's like sad that we're mourning this relative that, may have offered its life for us, but we still have to process that. We still have to honor that life. And I think about how much mentally clearer we would be if everything that we wore was prayed over, everything that we lived in was, didn't come from slave labor.
Right. Well, that is one place where I agree with the Christians. We need to do a whole lot more praying. Although I want to involve a whole lot more gods. It's the relationship, and that, I think, is why in so many native languages there isn't a word for art or artisan.
Yeah.
There is because the things we made to eat our food, or the things we made to wear, everything was made as best as we could and as beautifully as we could.
Mm-hmm.
Even quick baskets that are made just to gather something, seaweed quickly at the ocean, something, they're still done well, even if they are quick. It's the relationship, which is why I'm glad that I didn't anticipate relationship with this canoe. And it was that moment when I realized I was in love with this canoe. I thought, there's the relationship. And it's good to be in love with the canoe and have her love you back, because it keeps you from those orphans. That's it. We have to keep talking to people, because I will.
We don't have any more questions.
No questions.
Let's see. There's
Maybe
feel
have
free to
talk
wrap
people.
up.
I miss talking to people.
I know.
Right?
I miss it. I miss it too. I feel like no canoe journey this year.
Yeah, the virus has closed that down, and I was afraid that there would be no canoe journey next year, because how could casinos make any revenue? Tribes. But there
Yeah.
is going to be a 2021
Okay.
canoe journey, which people should look up.
Good.
Tribal canoe journey.
Yeah, tribal canoe journeys. Look it up. All right. Well, aside from all the gay Indians knowing they can come talk to us if they feel lonely, I don't know if we have anything else.
I think that's about it. I mean, we could go on about the canoe and construction, but it might just be better if you come over and see for yourself.
Okay. Well, I'll see you later.
Okay.
I'll
How do we check out? We
We
say
just
bye,
said
ACTA.
bye.
Thank you for a lovely time. Thank you for thinking of us.
yeah. We say, abolish the police. Black Lives Matter.
All right.
Abolish ICE. That's well. Okay. Teboa.
Yeah. Get out of the canoe.